Second service, how we doing? Fantastic. It's good to be with you this morning. Here's my question. Do you remember anything about January 2009? Probably not. It was 14 and a half years ago. It was a really long time ago, right? January 2009. But it was a big month for our nation, maybe even the world. For example, Beyonce came out with All the Single Ladies in January of 2009. Barack Obama was inaugurated as the 44th president of the United States of America, our first African-American president. But maybe the most important day in January was on the 15th. January 15th, 2009. Started out as a pretty ordinary day, but by the end of the day, our entire country, if not the world, were talking about a miracle. And here's what happened. Flight 1549, a U.S. Airways flight, who is going to leave LaGuardia Airport in New York at about 3:30 in the afternoon, headed for Charlotte, North Carolina. Their captain, Captain Chelsea Sullenberger, also known as Sully, did all of his usual pre-flight checks, and everything checked out just fine. That was until 2 minutes into the flight when a flock of Canadian geese flew in to both of the engines of the plane. Now, one goose, one engine, it's a problem, but it can be solved. A flock into both engines, disastrous. Almost instantly, the plane lost power in both engines. And they were heading north at this time, right over the Bronx. There was no time. They looked ahead, saw a couple of smaller airports in Jersey. If you listen to the flight audio recording, they even discuss it. No, we can't make it. And if we don't, we're going to land in a densely populated area, not just killing everybody on the plane, but killing everybody on the ground as well. They thought about the New Jersey Turnpike, big, wide highway. No, not going to do that. Didn't think they could make it. Also, the danger to the cars on the ground, all of that. No. So then, almost instantly, they choose. Captain Sully and his flight crew, they choose to land the plane in the Hudson River. Now, this is pretty incredible what happens next, because landing a plane in water is difficult, to say the least. Any wrong move, if the wing catches, if the nose catches, all of a sudden the plane's flipping like a gymnast and it blows apart and everybody dies. So they have to do this just right, but it's the only option they have left. And in the 2 or 3 minutes they had before landing, Sullenberger and his co-pilot had to make so many choices. They had to get so much done that we kind of can know about, but there's a lot they had to do that if we're not pilots, we just wouldn't know about. Here's actually the list that I pulled up this list. Here's all they had to do. They had a couple of minutes and they did all of these things. They had to shut down the engines. They had to set the speed so the plane could glide as long as possible without power. Fortunately, Sully was also a glide instructor. They had to get the nose of the plane down so that they could maintain speed. They had to disconnect the autopilot, override the flight management system. They had to activate what's called the ditch system, which seals sort of all of the valves and vents in the plane so that it's waterproof and it's not going to instantly fill with water. And then they had to fly and then glide the plane in this fast left-hand turn so that they could come down sort of facing south so they could land with the flow of the river. Right? But they've already turned off the engines at this point, so it's just emergency battery power they're doing all of this with. Then they had to straighten the plane up from the tilt of that sharp left-hand turn so that they could be level from side to side. And then finally, they actually had to tilt the nose back up so that it could land straight on the water. They did all of that in a couple of minutes. They did it, right? Everyone got off the plane safely. Captain Sully himself, we're told, walking up and down the aisles, making sure everyone got off. And then he went above and beyond, because once in the rescue rafts, he saw a passenger freezing. And so he took off his own shirt in the cold New York January and gave a shirt to one of the passengers. Now, I think on some level, this most certainly is a miracle. In fact, this moment is called the miracle on the Hudson. But on the other hand, I don't think it's much of a miracle. On the other hand, this successful landing happened in the face of potentially catastrophic scenario as a result of years and years and years of training and experience. The miracle on the Hudson was made possible as a result of nearly 20,000 hours of flight time, both as a U.S. Air Force fighter pilot and also as a commercial airline pilot. Sully wasn't born with some natural ability to fly, let alone the specific skill set that he exhibited in those 3 terrifying minutes. You have to work at mastering that sort of a skill set. And he practiced and practiced and practiced hour after hour in the simulator, hour after hour of actually flying planes from point A to point B. None of it mattering until the one moment it did on January 15th, 2009. And because he practiced so much, because he had the 20,000 hours of flight time, Sully and his co-pilot were able to respond out of instinct, what at this point came naturally to them. Could you imagine if the geese fly into the engines, they're losing power, right? And Sully didn't know what to do, and he had to go to the flight manual and look up the section titled What to Do When Canadian Geese Fly into the Engines. By the time he finds the page, everybody's dead. 155 souls were on the plane that day. But he practiced. He practiced it 1,000 times when it didn't matter. And then on that 1,001st time, when it did matter, he found what the situation required. And what looks like to you and I as a miracle or as something that just sort of happened, it didn't just happen. It was a process. It was work. It was training. It took an enormous amount of effort and trial and error. And let's do it again, and let's do it again, and let's do it again. Now, I tell you that story, Captain Scully and the miracle on the Hudson, because I think for me, it reminds me a lot of what we could call the Christian life, sort of following Jesus, at least on some level. Because the Christian life it's not about being sprinkled with fairy dust and then magically you fly. It's not the wave of a wand and now all of a sudden, all of your issues have vanished and you're never again going to make a poor choice. You don't just say a prayer and everything's different. No, the Christian life is about learning to live like Jesus, particularly his way of love. That's the Christian life. And that doesn't come naturally. Living like Jesus and sort of out of his way of love, in fact, that's counterintuitive. We don't wake up living like that. Like Sully, not waking up knowing how to fly, we woke up one day not knowing just how to naturally put others first. We are awesome at putting ourselves first. No, the Christian life is about learning over time to live like Jesus. Now, if you're new to Neighborhood, we say this a lot, but we say it a lot because there's always a lot of guests here. We're a Jesus church. We're a Jesus church, which means for us that Jesus is unrivaled in history and in eternity. Being a Jesus church for us means that we see Jesus as the model for what it means to be a human, to flourish and thrive as a human. That Jesus and learning to live like him is how we tap into our fullest potential, both individually and as a community. And in those moments, when in some sense a flock of Canadian geese fly into the engines of our life, We have spent now a life pursuing Jesus and his way of love, practicing. Because, here's the thing. There's going to be a moment in your life where it feels like you're about to crash land. Yes? You've had one of those before, would be my guess. Learning to live like Jesus is just asking the question, how do we get to the point where we no longer have to reference the handbook? In that crucial moment in our lives when the geese have flown into the engine, chaos, we are going down, no question about it. How do we get to the moment where rather instinctively, naturally, second nature sort of a way, we respond as Jesus would respond? That is to say, how do we respond in those moments of chaos? Challenge. The geese have flown into the engines. How do we respond with other-centered, sacrificial love? How does that become our knee-jerk reaction? How do we get to the point where love is our second nature when we get emotionally triggered? When someone doesn't go the second the light turns green, right? When your coworker is lazy and doing nothing, and now you're picking up the slack. When you discover that someone's betrayed your trust. When you have the opportunity to betray a trust. When quitting would quite frankly just be easier. Like Sully in the flight simulator, practicing scenario after scenario every day of our lives. Hundreds of times we get the opportunity to sort of practice living like Jesus. Do we do it right every day? Absolutely not. We're going to screw it up all the time. I've actually been in a flight simulator. I had a friend who was a pilot up in the Fresno Air Base, and he let me go in the simulator. And taking off was no problem at all. But I kept getting shot down, crash land. It was terrible again and again and again. And he's like, no, you got to do it like, I'm like, no, I should never fly planes. That's what I learned. It was so bad. Again, taking off, that was no problem. Starting the journey, no problem. Finishing the journey, big problem for me, right? But how do we, I'm sure if I spent as much time as he spent in the flight simulator and in a plane flying it, that at some point it'd become second nature. That what holds true is that the more we practice, the better we get. The more we practice, the better we get. And the closer we get to the way of Jesus being second nature, instinctual, automatic response. The more we practice and evaluate that practice. Oh, could have done better there. Need to ask for forgiveness here. Right? The better we get at orienting our lives around Jesus. Now, what's interesting is the guys that wrote the Christian scripture, they kind of speak into this idea a little bit and kind of move us away from sort of fairy dust, magic wand version of Christianity and following Jesus and sort of into this idea that, no, living like Jesus is this thing we practice and that we have to work for a little bit, efforts involved. In fact, one guy, his name's Paul, we talk about him a lot around here, because he kind of has this really dramatic conversion story. He was a Jewish religious leader that actually was pretty hell-bent on wiping Christianity off the face of the planet sort of before it got any legs under it. And so he went around sort of arresting and torturing and beating and killing people that followed Jesus. But he has this really dramatic moment with Jesus on his way to go get some more Christians, and he converts. Not only does he convert, he kind of becomes like the super Christian, and he ends up writing a bunch of letters that make up most of the Christian scripture. 2/3 of the Christian scripture, we call it the New Testament, is written by this guy, Paul, this Jewish religious leader who really was not a fan of Christianity, turned sort of super Christian, if you will. But one of the letters that survive was Paul was writing to a buddy of his named Timothy. And he's trying to describe the Christian life or what following Jesus looks like. And here's what Paul has to say to Timothy. So have nothing to do with godless myths and old wives' tales. Rather, here it is, train yourself. Notice we are not talking about fairy dust or wands. Train yourself to be godly. For physical training is of some value, but godliness has value for all things, holding promise for both the present life and the life to come. This is a trustworthy saying that deserves full acceptance. So he's saying, just trust me on this one, Tim. He goes on. That is why we labor and strive, because we have put our hope in the living God, who is the Savior of all people, especially of those who believe. Okay, I highlighted the words that really matter here. Train, labor, strive, put thought and intention and sweat equity into this thing. Learning to live like Jesus takes practice. And it's not easy. It's labor. It's striving. Right? I just think at some point we've convinced ourselves, especially us people who like our church folk, we've convinced ourselves that the good life is the easy life. That's just not even true. No, you work for the good life. There's effort involved in the good life. Not everything goes right in the good life. And we've translated sort of the good life is easy to, well, that's how Jesus works too. I'm going to say yes to Jesus, and everything will fall into place. That's fairy dust and magic wands, right? And that's why you get lots of people who run around talking about their faith in Jesus, but they're horrible people. You don't want to spend any time with them because they're jerks. They're not kind. They're self-centered. They're all of these things. And those people tend to often tell you how long they've been a Christian. I've been a Christian 30 years. Well, it's not working, dude. Right? Like, come on. No. Most often what you get is someone who's been a Christian 1 year, 30 times. Because they prayed the prayer. They got the magic dust, their ticket to heaven. We're good to go. I'm done. And do you know when that faith falls apart? That faith falls apart when geese fly into the engine of your life and you're going down. Because if your faith at that point was the good life is the easy life, if you haven't yet, you're going to run into some geese. And your life is going to be headed towards a crash landing. What do you do? What do you do when the fairy dust doesn't work anymore? When the magic wand doesn't work, what do you do? Many people will walk away. They'll just say, faith wasn't what I thought it was, and so they leave. I'm just going to try something new. That kind of thing, honestly, if we could go back and just talk to some of the first Jesus people, I mean, they didn't even have a category for this kind of conversation. Because for them, crisis moments, the chaos moments, that, okay, we've been practicing 1,000 times, now it's the 1,001st time. I mean, for them, that's when it really paid off. That's when this Jesus thing worked. That's when you see the miracle happen. If you've been practicing and it doesn't matter, you just, hey, every day I'm just doing my best. And I'm practicing. But it's 1,000 times, there's really it's not life or death is on the table. But for the early Jesus people, they knew that 1,001 moment is coming. And it needs to be natural at that point. It needs to be second nature at that point. We need to have been working towards that. And in fact, Jesus' brother actually talks about it in a way that, man, if the good life's the easy life, then what Jesus' brother James is about to say will make no sense. No sense at all. Here's what he says. Consider it a gift. Okay, so what's a gift, James? Tests and challenges. Geese flying into the engine. Consider that a gift? You're insane, James. Why is it a gift? You know that under pressure, in that 1,001 moment when it does count, your faith life is forced into the open and it's going to show its true colors. So don't try to get out of it. I mean, this is what we've been working for. Let it do its work so you become mature and well-developed, not deficient in any way. I mean, if your view of the Christian life is the easy life, And that's the good life. If it's fairy dust and magic wands, James is a psychopath. But if the Christian life is the life in pursuit of Jesus' way of love, every day a flight simulator, so to speak, every day logging another few hours of flight time, well, then I think James makes perfect sense. Because these are the moments that really matter. And all the little things that didn't really matter, all the little times you chose love and kindness and compassion when they absolutely didn't deserve it. Over time, love and kindness and compassion sort of just get in you. And they become second nature. And now the moment when your engines are failing and it's crash landing time, you don't have to go to the handbook because it's in you. You just know how to respond. Okay, let me give you another way to look at this. So let's move away. So keep Sully in your brain because that's a great story. Don't forget that. In fact, tomorrow in the email you're going to get from me, I actually put a link just to the cockpit audio of that moment, those 3 minutes. It's pretty fascinating how mellow Sully is in those 3 minutes. He just says things like, we ran into some geese. We've lost power. I would have been like, oh my God. He just, you'll hear, please listen, you'll hear the flight controllers go, what do you need? You want to land in Jersey? He's like, nah, that's not going to work. And then you just hear him go, we'll be in the Hudson. I mean, that's it. I was like, what? How is this guy so calm? I would have lost my mind. I just keep trying to put myself as a passenger in that, where all he says to them is, brace for impact. What? Don't say that to me, right? Okay, here's another way to sort of look at this. I want to put faith, and this is definitely an oversimplification, and there's so much nuance and sort of all sorts of, well, what about and what if, so just know I know that. But here's another way to look at it. Let's put faith into 3 categories. Here's the three categories. There's public conviction, private conviction, and core conviction. Public conviction, private conviction, and core conviction. Now, here's public conviction is essentially just the things we say about our faith out loud, right? It's just, I believe this and I want people to know. Now, here's the problem. Most of the time with public conviction, that's why we're saying it. We want to identify with the tribe. We want to be friends with those people or whatever. So I believe that's what I believe, and I'm publicly confessing that. Now, best case scenario with public conviction is it's just the birthplace of faith for you, because every once in a while, we do have to just say some things out loud to sort of get used to the idea, right? And that's great. That's okay. But oftentimes, public conviction actually has some shady ulterior motives most of the time. It's really mostly still about you, and you're just like, yeah, I publicly confess, right? Your wife made you come here today, and you don't want to feel left out, so you're like, yeah, Jesus, woo! But, whatever, right? That's public conviction. In fact, there's actually a story of this, like in the life of Jesus. We can go to the life of Jesus, and we see a great story of sort of how if we stop at public conviction, it can be somewhat disastrous. So if you know the story of Jesus' birth, so let's go way back, right? So Jesus' birth story, remember the Roman Empire is ruling the world at the time, but they've installed a bit of a puppet king, if you will, to kind of run things for them. This guy's name was Herod, or Herod the Great, as history knows him. And he knew he was the puppet king, but he loved all the power and wealth and influence and all of that came with it. Well, something happens that's a little bit wild. We're told that a star shows up when Jesus is born. And the star, there's, kind of rumors and stories, all the different cultures kind of had this thing going on. When a star showed up, a newborn king would come, that was going to be a big deal. So some smart, sort of astrologer type, educated elite, we're just told in the East, see the star. And so they follow it. They want to go meet the king, this newborn king. And so they make their way all the way to Israel. Well, they don't know where to go from here. I mean, the star is somewhat vague. Okay, we're here, we're in Israel. But so they they go to the current king, figured he'd know where the new king is born. And so they go to him. Well, Herod is not a fan of this at all. He likes the power, the prestige, the wealth that comes with that. And so he sort of tries to play a little bit of a trick using public conviction to get to Jesus so he could kill him, essentially. So here's how it gets recorded. So then Herod called the Magi. That was these sort of, educated elite from the East. Then Herod called the Magi secretly and found out from them the exact time the star had appeared. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, "Go and search carefully for the child. And as soon as you find him, report to me so that I may go and worship him." So again, here's public conviction. Hey, I want to worship Jesus too. Right? But if you know the story, you know that was not what Herod actually wanted to do. He wanted to know where Jesus was so he could go kill Jesus. He actually never found Jesus because mom and dad took him down to Egypt. It's a whole thing. But we're told Herod actually kills all the kids that would have been Jesus' age, maybe 2 years and younger. Right? So here's public conviction. Yeah, just being nothing more than still trying to get my own way or fit in or whatever it may be. And again, at best, it's the beginning of faith, and we're just trying to say some things out loud to see if we really, really believe it. So that's public conviction. Here's private conviction. Now, private conviction is a little different in that private convictions are things that we actually do believe we believe, right? These ideas that are internally we're pretty sincere about, or at least we're pretty sure we're pretty sincere about it. But the problem with private conviction is oftentimes once our reality shifts or circumstances change or whatever, and our private conviction gets put to the test, we tend to shift with our circumstances. We tend to shift with whatever scenario's happening, right? We shift and we change to fit into our new reality. And again, we see an example of this from the life of Jesus. So we just talked about his birth. Let's talk about his death. Right, so we get to the point where Jesus is going to be arrested, go to trial, and ultimately executed. Well, before all of that happens, he's having dinner with his closest friends and followers. And he says to them, "Hey, just so you know, you all are about to abandon me." Well, this is not dinner conversation, Jesus. And they all sort of deny that. No, I am not. We're not going to. In fact, one guy's pretty serious about it, and his name's Peter. And here's how Peter responds to Jesus's guess, I guess. Then Jesus told them, "This very night you will all fall away on account of me." Peter replied, "Even if all fall away, these knuckleheads probably will, Jesus. But I never will. Truly, I tell you," Jesus answered, "this very night before the rooster crows, you're going to not just do it once, you're going to disown me 3 times," right? The story goes on. But Peter declared, "Even if I have to die with you, I will never disown you." And all the disciples said the same thing. Now, was this a sincere belief? I think so. I don't think that Peter's posturing. I think he believed that. It was a private conviction. But Jesus' prediction, spot on. They all bailed on Jesus to save their own necks. They had private conviction. They were sincere. But was that conviction authentically true? It didn't stick, right? When the moment of crisis came, their belief was still not automatic. It wasn't second nature to them. And their private conviction shifted to what was good for them. Public conviction, things I say I believe. Private conviction, things I think I believe. Finally, core conviction. Now, core conviction is different because core convictions are things I demonstrate I believe by what I actually do. For example, at my core, I'm convinced the law of gravity's true, which is why I don't have to try to not jump off of tall buildings, right? I believe Gravity is so deeply ingrained in its reality that what goes up must come down is so deeply a part of my life, I can't help but respond out of that core conviction. I'm convinced at the deepest level, if I jump, gravity kicks in and I die. So I don't have to try to not jump. Your behavior, my behavior, is always a result of our core convictions about reality, about how things really are. And here's the thing about core convictions, you actually can't violate them. I mean, really, it's very difficult to violate a core conviction. Public convictions are things I say I believe. Private convictions are things I think I believe. Core convictions are things I show I believe by what I do. And it comes naturally, second nature, because it is deeply embedded in my perspective on how reality works. My public conviction tends to begin pretty dubious, pretty shady. I'm still looking out for number one. Our private convictions, while sincere, tend to be fickle. But we can't really violate our core convictions about the way things are. Core convictions are those convictions that are automatic. They're those things, these conditions, these that just have a second nature bit to them. Core convictions are those things that are now determining how I live, and I no longer have to try all that hard because I've logged enough flight time with it. I've spent enough time in the simulator with it, and I'm convinced at the deepest level this is how the world works. Now, what's really interesting about a place like church is oftentimes church people get together because they think two things are true, at least. Our public convictions, pretty much, not always. Neighborhood's a pretty diverse place, but for the most part, our public convictions all line up. Our private convictions all line up, right? You know, if you're here and you're a Jesus follower, you've got a private conviction that Jesus is the Son of the living God, right? That he was born, lived a life, executed, and rose from the dead on that first Easter Sunday. We line up. Most of us will line up. Public conviction, private conviction. But if we got down to core conviction and how we were responding to the chaos moments in our life, oftentimes in churches what you find is that the mental maps about how things really are completely different. And it's why you can get some Christians who are really kind and generous, like these wonderful people, and it kind of looks like a miracle. But it didn't just happen. This Jesus and how he sees the world has gotten to the place where it's a core conviction. It's so deeply embedded, it's just second nature. But we can also have people with similar public and private convictions that are those people that are still the jerks, that still haven't changed. They haven't moved an inch in the 30 years they've been publicly confessing. And for someone like me, pastor, right? That's a little problematic because the problem is if we think that Christianity and the whole Jesus thing is just public and private convictions, then we'll actually always be blind to the fact that our core convictions may still very well be out of step with the way of Jesus because we've checked the boxes. I've publicly confessed. I got in the water when we pulled the jacuzzi out for baptism. I privately have some sincere beliefs. And we think that's all there is to it. And so we don't really go about our day practicing the way of Jesus. We don't see every day as a flight simulator, as logging flight time, as just practicing. So when that moment comes, that 1001st time, there's a second nature about us. No, if we oftentimes because, again, Christianity it's fairy dust and magic wands, and the good life is the easy life, and that's that. I'm done. I show up. Forrest, I haven't put some of my change in those little boxes at the back. What else do you want from me? I don't want anything from you. I have some things I want for you. And I truly believe that the best way to live life is the way of love. And I want that to be second nature for all of us, because Jesus didn't come to change your private conviction, your sincerely held intellectual beliefs. Pretty sure Jesus actually is on it. No, he came to change your core convictions, how you see the world fundamentally, to the point that it's second nature, that you see it through the lens of love and compassion and grace. How you see relationships, how you see you. Jesus is interested in changing your mental map so you actually have a new set of lenses you're looking at the world through. And because now you have that new mental map, these core convictions, you just respond differently. And it's second nature. It's automatic, right? That's just how it works. Jesus wants what's true of gravity to be true of how we love each other. We just do it. It's just natural. I don't have to go to the handbook anymore. Now, please don't hear me say that and be like, Forrest says not to read the Bible. Just stop. You know that's not what I'm saying, so don't push it. Right? But that's the point. Like, when we are confronted with moments that matter, we're responding. You know you're going to respond instantly. Is love automatic, or are we like, hold on, I got to go to the handbook? When the day comes and the geese fly into the engines of our life and we're going down, we need the way of Jesus to be second nature, to be automatic. And here's the thing, if it is, I think you'll be surprised how many miracles start popping up in your life. I think you'll be surprised, because Jesus doesn't make life perfect, absolutely not, nor does he make you perfect, but he does make us better at life. He does make us better at life. But we got to train. We got to practice. It takes effort. It takes seeing life as a flight simulator, as log and flight hours. And here's the good news. At Neighborhood, we've actually I don't think we've totally solved this riddle, but we have tried to put together a bit of a training plan for you, because we just so deeply sort of believe in this and want your core conviction to be the way of love, the way of Jesus, that we put together a little bit of a training plan. Again, it's not perfect. There's holes in it, but I think it's what a large organization can do to help you move this way. And so today, to wrap up, I just want to give you the training plan. That's all I want to do. Here's sort of the flight simulator we've created at Neighborhood. So here it is. The first thing is stay connected. Number 2, help out. Number 3, grow deep. So stay connected. You've heard me say this so much. Christianity is a we faith. It's not a me faith. You actually cannot do the Jesus thing all by yourself. And here's why. Because if the way of Jesus is love, you need people in your life that annoy you so you can practice, right? Christianity is a we faith. It is not a me faith. So, and here's the thing. I mean, many of you are already connected in community and you're like, I don't need any more friends. That's fine, but we believe so much in this that we've actually created an environment called small groups for you to get connected and sort of be around some people that, maybe you do get along with, maybe you don't, but it's really just about getting together. And so today's actually the last day, the last possible day you can sign up. And remember, we do, sort of the port key to everything is our next lounge outside on the patio. So please go out there. Or that little, on the card in the seat back in front of you has a QR code. You can kind of do it all digitally and avoid people at all costs. And so that's how, those 2 ways. So stay connected, get in a group. If you're not in one, if you feel like you don't really have deep community and, you need it. So we've created that space. Number 2, help out. One of the best ways to follow Jesus is making it not about you. So serve. And we see Neighborhood Church as this extended spiritual family. And just like any family, the house we just have to break up chores so everybody gets involved. And we're running on all cylinders when everybody's got a chore to do and everybody's doing their chores kind of a thing. And so, help out. Take a next step and just help out. right? Like, whatever that is, if you're like, you know what, it looks like those greeter people don't do much, I'm going to do that. Like, great, that's a great first step. I'm just kidding, guest services, I love you. So, and you're radically important. But, you know, maybe for you, though, you want to be super spiritual and you're going to go, you know, to the nursery or preschool and wipe noses, maybe change some diapers or whatever. And that takes some faith, because that's frankly disgusting if it's somebody else's kid, right? So, but there's all sorts of ways to help out, but we would love it if you took a step to help out. Again, because of what we want for you. This is such a big deal. And then the last one is grow deep. Dive into the Jesus stuff, like explore Jesus and the life that he's offering and what all of this like way of love stuff. Again, in here on Sunday mornings, it's like the rally, right? I mean, I've got a half hour and that's it, and we're going, and I can't be the, you know, end word on anything, really. So we've got all sorts of stuff. The first thing you can do, honestly, it's all digital. You don't have to interact with anybody. You can just get a daily devotion sent to your inbox every day. Again, that QR code or the Next Lounge, you can kind of get dialed up for that. 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, we'll have a daily devotion. And man, just if you started practicing, just starting your day with Jesus, I wonder what could change. Here's another cool thing, and this is just for the fellas. But it's brand new for us. We're doing a men's breakfast at the end of the month, Rise and Grind men's breakfast at Neighborhood Church. Someone on our staff came up with that name. I don't know what that means, Rise and Grind. But it's a men's breakfast, Neighborhood Saturday. We know you got youth sports and all that stuff, so 7 to 8:30, but just time to get together, and I'll be there with some content, and we'll have some discussion around the tables and a great breakfast and all of that. And then the last thing, if you're really like, I'm pretty freaked out about joining a group, we actually have a great online group that's starting up called Practicing the Way. So literally the whole group is about having a conversation about what it means to see life as sort of this flight simulator. Learning the way of love to the point that it's a core conviction and it comes naturally to us. So stay connected, help out, grow deep. It's a great training plan. We hope you jump into the flight simulator that we've created here at Neighborhood. Again, the Next Lounge out on the patio, the QR code and on the card and seat back in front of you. Let me close with just one quote. It's a quote from a late philosopher at USC and Christian thinker. His name was Dallas Willard. He wrote a book called The Great Omission. So the great thing we've left out. And here's what he says. The greatest issue facing the world today, with all its heartbreaking needs, is whether those who, by profession or culture, public or private conviction, are identified as Christians will become convicted at their core, disciples, students, apprentices, practitioners of Jesus Christ, steadily learning from him how to live the life of the kingdom of the heavens into every corner of human existence. Dallas Willard identified the primary problem with culture today is a whole lot of church folk, publicly convicted, privately convicted, but love is yet their second language. It's not their core conviction. It doesn't come automatic. And so my prayer is, as a church, that we together say, let's just be people who are really good at practicing the way of Jesus together. That we can hopefully get to the place that love is our automatic response. And as a result, we start to see miracles. We okay? All right. Let's pray. Jesus, thanks so much for today. And for the way. I mean, you've offered us a way of love, the better way, the higher way. But it's not fairy dust. It's not a magic wand being waved over us. It just takes effort. It just takes work. And we don't have to do it perfect. It's a lifelong pursuit of allowing love to become our automatic response when the geese fly in to the engines of our life and it feels like we're crash landing. Jesus, we love you, and it's in your name we pray. Amen.